Why Toronto?
Started in Toronto because we just don't have the opportunities to go into a new building in New York that's sort of going to give us a space. And one of the challenges that has always been presented to us is that we can never do something in a large space. I sort of am a sucker for a good challenge, and more importantly, getting everything new pipes, new water mains, new everything is really exciting to a guy like me, because that's the stuff that breaks all the time in New York, and the stuff that you take for granted. I think just about anywhere else, to carve out a new space was really exciting.
Now, why this city in terms of like food culture?
It's a growing city. It's a city with all the infrastructure that you would want. It has public transportation, it has finance, it has 3 major sports teams.
It's a little conservative food-wise, though,
It is a little conservative food-wise, but you know, we want to be part of something that's going to change over the long term. So I think people have this notion that we're here one and done, and we really want to try to ingrain ourselves in the food community here.
So I noticed, so you bring some guys with you from New York, but you also hire people locally who know the local farmers.
Right. Well, and we can also discover things together. Most of the staff here is Canadian, and we wanted to do something that was, you know, had its own original DNA, sort of a merger of the two, of New York and what Toronto, and that's sort of what we're trying to do. Is whatever we're creating here, it's going to evolve into something that I hope in 10 years, what we're serving here and what is serving in New York is drastically different. I look at it like an accent. How can someone in England and how can someone in Boston sound completely different, but they're speaking the same language? Here in Toronto, you see a lot of pea meal sandwiches, so it's just slices of pea meal bacon, griddled and served on a roll. Well, we wanted to do our version of it because it's so delicious, and that was it. And then it's more or less what we serve, a pork bun, but with pea meal bacon instead. So
the pea meal has the mustard and pickles,
yeah,
and then the pork has more of a sort of a sweeter hoisin.
It's just hoisin, pickle cucumbers as well, and roasted pork belly.
And one of the things that David Chang was telling me that is so unique to this location, not just the products he's getting from within the province, but also the ingredients themselves. So things like water, which you take for granted, very different in Toronto than it is in New York City. Also the noodles, a different product than what he's getting in New York City. And even things like the chicken and the daikon and the radish and the rice cakes. All those things have unique qualities that aren't necessarily going to be translated the same way as they are in New York City. So the experience here, while it is a Momofuku noodle bar, a lot of the meals, a lot of the dishes are going to taste vastly different.
So the first floor is noodle bar, and it's the only other noodle bar that we have in anywhere, but it's different. Everything tastes different, with the exception of maybe the pork buns, but even still everything tastes different because the pork we get is different from the local farms. We don't have Berkshire crosses. They're more Tamworth, so the fat content is very different. The noodles we use here, we don't make them. They're just a bit chewier here. I think a lot of that has to do with the water and the protein structure of the noodles. I can't get. You know, in New York, we started using a lot of smoky elements, bacon from Tennessee and hams from Allen Benton. So that was sort of our ad hoc, like delivered smokehouse that we could infuse into our soups. Because to me, Japanese cuisine has this undertone of smokiness that no one really talks about, but I feel is this sort of glue. I can't get any of those products in Canada, so we have to make it ourselves. So we have a smoker that's smoking pretty much all the time on the 3rd floor, where we're making our own sort of smoked meats, but the flavor's different. It's just totally different.
And the rice cakes.
Rice cakes are different. The rice cake texture is softer.
Chicken with these noodles that you love underneath, and this crispy skin.
Crispy skin, the egg, and I have a lot of arguments with Wiley Dufresne about what's the best way to cook this type of egg, because the egg white and egg yolk cook at totally different temperatures. I like mine a lot runnier than most, partly because, you know, in Asia, particularly Korean cuisine, they add an egg to almost all the stews to add a sort of an inexpensive creaminess or luxury, I like to say. So it's probably the cheapest way you can add luxury to a dish is an egg yolk. And you know, you can mix it up in all sorts of ways, but this is burnt miso, so it has, you know, a little bit of caramelization and bitterness, which is also good in food in a certain degree. So instead of mixing it all up, I can now have like a Cobb salad. I can have bits and pieces of the ramen that taste different. It's not just a monotone.
Okay, so noodle bar is one concept.
Yeah.
And the other
second floor is Nikai, which was just a really unclever name for second floor, because it was just so large. I was like, what the hell are we going to put here? And it's just a cocktail lounge, and it's a work in progress.
So third floor is Daisho.
Third floor is Daisho and Shoto, so 2 restaurants.
And Daisho to me seemed a little bit sambar-ish menu-wise, no?
Yes,
okay.
And more of our version of sort of like, for lack of a better term, like a steakhouse. It was supposed to be like a steakhouse. Turned into something that wasn't a steakhouse, and hopefully he's going to go back into something that's a steakhouse. And our version, mind you, our version of a steakhouse is nothing like what a steakhouse might be.
More Kalbi based. No?
Yeah, or not even Kalbi based. Like, I don't even know what it.
Oh, okay.
You know, in Shoto's this 22-seat degustation.
Like Co.
Like Co. or Aseobo in Sydney, but there's nothing we serve upstairs that's similar to what we serve in. We don't even serve the foie, the frozen foie, or anything that people think that they're going to get. And the same in Sydney. It's been a real, not an effort, but it's very clear to us that we're not going to replicate anything.
So how do you find inspiration? What gets you stoked about creating stuff on your menu?
Focusing on the foods that we're trying, new flavors that we're trying to create through fermentation. Whether it's making our own versions of misos and soy sauce, or experimenting with koji, a mold called Aspergillus oryzae, which flavors sake and miso and soy. It was sort of taking a new direction. Okay, I may not know, or may not be in every kitchen or what's going on, but I'm going to understand the base flavor profile that we're using in most of them. And these are the things where if I can focus on that, we can be like, okay, these are the building blocks, and we're going to ship them off to other restaurants to be like, okay, let's make sure that we channel our energies and see where we can take these flavors and extrapolate on that.
There are chefs that are associated with certain things, like if Rene Redzepi is terroir and Jose Andres is Spain, what is David Chang? Is it even possible to sort of pigeonhole you like that?
I think that it would be nice to know. I think that only recently we've been learning fermentation, but I think for us, most people probably associate me with a pork bun.
Yeah, for better or for worse.
For better or for worse. Yeah. But we can't just open up one restaurant and just do that over and over and over again.
But you could do that in a place like Chicago.
I would love to do Chicago, but that's the reality is, you know, not just in America, there's very few places where the economy is booming, and someone's going to give us a building where they're like, here, there's 3 floors, it's like 30,000 square feet, take it.
If that happens in Chicago, would that get you to come?
We would I'd be very excited to look at that opportunity, absolutely. But at the same time, this is an opportunity to do something where, you know, people wouldn't expect it. We have room to make mistakes. And, you know, that's very important to me. You know, going back, if Jose is known for, you know, modern gastronomy and Rene is known for terroir and foraging and bringing that together in Scandinavia, we want to be the king of mistakes, you know, and I feel it's really important to be able to make mistakes. And when you're under the spotlight, whether it's in New York or Chicago, or let's just say we open up in London, which is really, like, the scrutiny is so intense, it's hard to grow, and you can't grow unless you make mistakes. I think one of the reasons why you'll never see a Faranadria again, or even a restaurant like Noma, for instance, is they were able to toil sort of in relative obscurity before any media really latched on. For Faran, it was near like 20 years of making mistakes. And you need that incubation period to really find your voice and to grow.
So what is next? What is next for you? You've done this. It's that's not in the past. You're still making mistakes here. But like, what's next on your agenda? What are you looking for a year, 2 years down the road for you?
This may sound cheesy or corny. I just want us to get everything obviously to be better. I didn't want to expand in Sydney or Toronto with the existing restaurants in New York couldn't get better as well. And I didn't want us to do something in Sydney and Toronto if it couldn't be, try to be the best in its category or its class. But it's all sort of guided under this principle that let's try to go focus on happiness rather than making ourselves miserable in the process.
And if somebody from Chicago came along and said, here's 30,000 square feet, it's all yours, maybe?
I would probably ask for 10,000.
All right.
But you know, it would certainly be an honor. We love Chicago, and you know, that's such an amazing food town. But you know, I want to spend less time traveling. Maybe you know, I don't know. We're very lucky to have a lot of growth opportunity, and I want to make sure that we're not growing for the sake of growth. And if we do grow, that we're doing it right.